Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back. Today we're going to go through my Northern Realms deck build. I've had a few questions on the channel about my deck build, and I've had a few requests to do deck build guides, and I've been holding off doing them just for the fact that generally I've found in the past when putting together videos like this, it tends to just get like a bunch of gnashing of teeth in the channel about how that's not the right way to do things, and that's not the right way this, and that's not, and I find that annoying as shit. So I've been holding off, but today a longtime subscriber asked a question about the deck, and I felt it was worth putting up a video just to go through some of the basics of how I've got my endgame deck built and some of the strategies around it. I'll put the typical caveat in here that I do in some of my videos, which is this is not the only way to build a Northern Realms deck. This is not the only way to play a Northern Realms deck, nor is the strategies I talk about the only strategies involved with playing a Northern Realms deck. Everything can be done to your own liking. You can customize the deck any way you want. I just thought it was helpful to put together a video, show you how I have my deck set up, and kind of give you the thinking behind why I set it up the way I did. So let's jump into our Gwent deck and get started. Commanders. On the Northern Realm side, for the commanders, I always run, by default, the Clearweather Commander. I find him to be the most powerful commander, in my opinion, because it allows me to play a Clearweather anytime I want, and it lets me completely ignore any weather effects that get stacked on the board. So I don't really have to worry about what someone else is playing against me. I know I always have this ace up my sleeve that I can whip out and drop down and kind of reset the weather on the board. So I find it very useful. It's also the reason that I don't run any clear weather cards myself. So early on in the game, you may wind up running this a lot and using your impenetrable fog cards from your deck themselves to deal with any ranged lines that wind up getting stacked against you. But honestly, once I got this commander, this is the only commander I really play in my Northern Realms deck at all. So I haven't really switched out. I really haven't found a need to. There are other decks that have other commanders which have better abilities, but since we're just talking about the Northern Realms deck, this is the guy I run. The other ones are this, pretty much a commander's horn on your siege unit line, and this, which is if you're playing against an enemy that is really siege heavy, it's a good way to kind of like rape his siege line permanently. So that is it on commanders. Nothing too special there. Once again, this is my recommendation for who to run because I found it to be so useful. Getting into the deck, my deck is built around a strategy of spies, medics, and decoys, and all of the unique mechanics that play into using those cards. So let's talk about what I've got running here. Go down to the bottom and check them out. I'm running Thaler, Dijkstra, Prince Stennis, and the Mysterious Elf. So I'm running 4 spies. The reason I'm running 4 spies is I enjoy playing the game in a way that will allow me to outdraw my opponent. If I can outcard them, I will generally win. The decks that you find this to be challenging against are definitely, or the deck that you find this challenging against is definitely going to be the Nilfgaardian Empire deck, because they also have the capability of running so many spies. However, the reason that I run 3 decoys all the time is because with the spy game, you're generally, unless you're playing against a monster deck, the way it's going to go is you'll play a spy on their board, and if they have the ability to, they will decoy 1 or more of your spies off and play them back on your side. So when you play the spy initially, you get 2 cards out of it. When they play it back on your side, if you have a decoy, you can decoy it off and play again, which instead of getting 2 cards out of a spy, you might end up getting 4 cards out of that spy because you're able to play it twice. Now, if you are running the Mysterious Elf, you know that this is a great spy card to play against an opponent that you know has medics or decoys because they can't medic this out of their discard pile, nor can they decoy it off the board. So it's a great way to permanently put a spy on their board that they really can't do anything about. When it comes to medics, I'm running the Dun Banner Medic, and I'm also running Yennefer. I'm running them both because when you play Yennefer, she's a one and done. You can't decoy her off the board, and you can't medic her out of your discard pile. However, when you play the Dun Banner Medic, you can play her, take a card out of your discard, and then you can decoy her off, play her back, and take another card out of your discard. If you play her and you're not able to decoy her off, or you choose not to, you can always, if you have Yennefer in your deck, play Yennefer to wind up medicing your medic out of your discard pile. So you wind up playing Yennefer to get this card out of your discard, and then when she plays on the board automatically, she gives you the ability to pull yet another card out of your discard pile. So it's a good way to chain medics together. And as I said, the decoys really help, especially with the Dun Banner Medic, because it allows you to play her and kind of, cheat your way through taking her off the board, putting her back on the board, taking her off the board, putting her back on the board to pull cards out of your discard pile. That I find to be incredibly useful. For the standard cards that I run 3 Blue Stripes Commandos, 3 Reavers Dragon Hunters, and 2 Catapults. Notice each one of them has the Tight Bond ability. As far as these cards go, these are my main point cards outside of heroes, and these 2 sets are the ones I stick with most often. I don't use the catapults unless I have to. So if I get these in an initial card draw, it's likely that I will discard them. And if they come back in a spy draw or something along those lines, that's okay. But I'm really trying to get my 2 or 3 Reavers Dragon Hunters, 2 or 3 Blue Stripes Commandos. When you're playing these cards, make sure you are careful how early you play them and how many you play on the board at a given time. The reason being, you've always got to be cognizant of Scorch. If you've seen Scorch come out, you might feel better about playing these guys again, but know that there's this Dragon card that is in the game as well. He's a 7-point card that has a Scorch ability on it that can come from someone else's deck. So there can be multiple Scorches that happen, but to bait out a Scorch, I might play 2 Blue Stripes Commandos or 2 Reavers Dragon Hunter. And the reason I would do that is because if I have the right setup in my deck, like a medic and a decoy, if I play them and it does successfully bait out a Scorch, I can always, either that round or the next round, play my medic, draw a card out of my discard pile, play my decoy, then play the medic again, and draw the other card out of my discard pile. So if I lost 2 Reavers Dragon Hunters, I could bring them out of discard, put them right back in the board, no problem. And if that baits out another Scorch, well, it kind of is what it is, but you made them burn 2 Scorches, and now you're clear to maybe play your Blue Stripes Commando and hope that they're not running the Dragon as well. I have never got Scorched 3 times in a game. It just hasn't happened. I'm sure it's statistically possible, but I'm telling you, it's never fucking happened to me. So that's the strategy I kind of employ with those cards, and that's why. Once again, catapults, they're useful because they have Tight Bond, but I don't go too hard after them. If I don't get them, I really don't care, and if I do see them in my initial draw, I usually discard them in hopes of pulling a spy or pulling one of these cards or my medic, because everything is kind of built around the spy, medic, decoy, Tight Bond collection of cards. So as far as heroes go, I do run all the Northern Realms heroes, so Philippa, Esterad, John Natalis, and Vernon Roach. I also run all of the neutral heroes, so Triss, Yennefer, Cirilla, and Geralt, as well as the Mysterious Elf, obviously. The one-off type, and the difference between what a neutral hero is and a Northern Realms hero is, you can see that banner on the left-hand side of the card that distinguishes an actual deck-specific hero from a neutral hero. So if it was a Nilfgaardian hero, it would have like a black banner. This is Northern Realms, so it's got a blue banner. The other card that I run is the 7-point Dragon with the Scorch ability. This is a novelty card for me. I like it because it's got points and because it has Scorch. It's not something that makes or breaks my deck. If I get it, that's great. If I don't care. If I was low on spies in my initial card draw with my discard ability, it's likely I would discard this if I wasn't sitting on, something like catapults or something along those lines, in order to try to get a spy. So if coming up here and looking at the special ability cards that I run 3 decoys. We talked about that. I always run 3 decoys. Asterisks. We'll talk about the asterisks there in a second. And I almost always run 2 Commander's Horns as well. So the reason I don't run 3 is because I feel like running 3 cuts down on my ability to draw other cards that I want more. The Commander's Horn is a great ability when I utilize it with my Reaver's Dragon Hunter or my Blue Stripes Commandos. However, outside of that, if I didn't get it, it would suck, but it wouldn't be a game changer the way I play. So I feel like I have the ability, if I can get my spies out, that I have the ability to draw enough cards that it will pull me down and allow me to win a game. Triss is another hero card that I may wind up discarding in my initial card draw just because she's a 7-point value hero. I like cards that can't get scorched. But if I was missing spies or if I wasn't able to build a decent set of these two, I might have to sacrifice her to try to get one of those in a card draw. So that's the basic setup of my deck. Let's talk about what I don't run and why. We talked about the Commander's Horn. Scorch is an amazing card. If you've watched my videos, you know I fucking hate playing against Scorch. It's something I'm always looking for because it can really screw you with the deck that I'm running and the setup I have. If you go too deep on your Blue Stripes Commandos or too deep on your Reaver's Dragon Hunters, you can get yourself in a bad spot really quick. It just doesn't work into my strategy. That's all it comes down to. It's not a bad card. I'm not saying not use it. Don't use it, rather. It just doesn't work for me. We were talking about the decoys. I said I always run decoys, asterisk, but what that meant was if I'm playing against a monster decks don't have the ability to medic spies out of their discard pile. So based on that alone, I don't run my decoys when I'm playing against a monster deck, just for the fact that I know I'm not going to wind up seeing every one of my spies that I play back on my side of the board again every single time. It's just not something you can guarantee. And I try to build this generic deck setup around things that I can guarantee to see in just about every game. The other thing I haven't seen monster decks do is decoy. I don't remember it. I'm old, so my memory could be faded and addled, and that's why I'm not thinking of it at the time. But I just don't remember playing I just don't remember playing a monster deck that was rocking decoys and was decoying spies off and playing them back on me. It may happen to you, but once again, it's just not something that's happened enough for me to build a deck around it. So generally when I'm going against the monster deck, I will completely ditch my decoys and maybe drop another Commander's Horn in here, maybe a Biting Frost or two. So that brings us to Biting Frost. The reason I don't generally run Biting Frost is the fact that Biting Frost, Torrential Rain, Impenetrable Fog, they're all weather cards, and my deck's commander ability is to clear weather abilities off the board. So I don't want to put myself in a situation where I have a card in my hand that I've played, and then the opposing player winds up playing something that's a weather card of their own that I really want to clear off, and then I do that and I wind up clearing off my own weather card. So it was like a wasted card play for me. I don't like to be in that situation, so generally I don't run weather cards. I say generally because early on in the game and even later, when I'm ditching these decoys against a monster deck, I will often replace them with Biting Frost because monster decks run a heavy close combat line, and they have a shit ton of muster draws that you see, and you can really give a monster deck player a bad day by dropping a Biting Frost on their close combat line and making their muster pretty much worthless. So that's the situation in which I would run this card. So before we close out, early on in the game, as you're building your deck, you're obviously not going to have all these cards. You are capable of picking up some of these special cards very early on. You're going to have a spy early on, and you're going to be able to pick up this additional spy Dijkstra. You're going to pick that up from playing the Baron really early on as well. So you'll have yourself 2 spies very early on. These guys can be obtained very early on. So, however, some of the hero cards, not so much. You're going to have to play some more Gwent quests to get into them. So to kind of fill out your deck without them, um, I would stick with your siege cards because they're high point values. Be careful playing siege cards that are all 6s and your opponent doesn't have like a 6 on the board, because you can wind up getting into these scorch situations where you get yourself screwed. So don't do that, but just pay attention to that when you're playing them. I like them because, once again, I can play them and I don't have to worry about like a torrential rain being put on them and then it completely invalidating that siege line. I can always just clear weather and go for the win. Along with these guys, I definitely, if you're going to employ that strategy by playing a lot of siege cards, I definitely recommend that you employ your Kedweni siege experts to help with increasing the value of your siege cards. It only increases them by 1, but it's 1 point's 1 point, especially if you have 3 or 4 siege cards down there. It can add up, especially if you wind up with like 2 Kedweni siege experts that you drop on a siege line. So that really helps. Early on, I was running a lot of poor fucking infantry guys, and the reason for that was I like point management and card management out of my deck. I don't like to play a 5-point card if I can play a 1-point card and accomplish the same task. So a lot of times, like when you get into, you've passed the first round and lost, and then you get yourself into a situation where your opponent comes out in the second round and drops like a 6 on the board, and then you play like a 5-point value card, and then they pass. You need to be able to beat them, otherwise you're going to lose the game. And it's nice to be able to just drop a sorry, if they played a 6 and you played a 6, you're going to need to be able to beat them, and it's nice to be able to just drop a 1-point card on the board versus having to drop like a 5, 6, or 7-point point card on the board in order to get the win. It's about deck management and point management in your deck. That's why you can see I run so few cards in my deck, and they all have a special purpose. So that's why I ran them early, and also if you draw a couple of them together, they're good opening cards. They're a good way to bait cards out of your opponent's deck. So if you can play a 1-point value card, and your strategy that first round is I'm going to play my 1-point value card, I'm going to play some spies, and I'm going to give up the round. If in so doing you can bait out, a 4-point value card or a 5 or a 10 or something along those lines with your 1, it's in your favor because it's likely not to show up in the following round unless you get yourself into a medic situation where they're medicing cards out of their discard pile. So that's why I would run these guys. These 2 cards I never ran, ever. They've never been in my deck. And then early on, obviously, I stacked my deck pretty heavy with some of these random cards that were of the higher point value. Ignore Dandelion, but just because I needed additional cards in my deck and there was nothing else to put in there. That's about it. I mean, there's nothing much you can do early on other than to run some of these basic cards and just use them for what they are, which is the point value. Just make sure that you're managing what cards you have in your deck along with like your Commander's Horns. So if you're running a bunch of ranged cards, make sure you, if that's your strategy, make sure you put all of the ranged cards in your deck versus like doing 1 ranged card and like 1 close combat and then a siege or something, because that plays into using the Commander's Horn. When you get those cards available to drop on a line, you can maximize the line by having more of that specific type on the line when you play it. So that's about it. And the reason I don't run Dandelion is because I just don't care about Dandelion. I'd rather have the Commander's Horn card where I can play anywhere I want versus having to only be able to play it on my close combat line, which would affect my Blue Stripes Commandos. So that's why I don't run him. I just run one of these instead. So that is it for the Northern Realms deck build strategy. I hope this has helped explain how I have my deck set up. Please check the video description. I've got links to all of the other Gwent videos that I have on the channel, and if you're interested in seeing how some games play out, there's a tutorial on there where I go through quite a few games in the tutorial, and then all the Gwent Quest videos all have the full gameplay from all of the Gwent games that you have to play in Witcher 3, so that you can see how your opponent's decks are built, what cards they run, what strategies they employ, and how I beat them with this deck. So I hope that helps. Thanks for watching. Take care.